Hi folks, this is Chemistry Module 12 lecture. We're talking about gas laws today. So the first thing you need to know about gas laws is how to deal with pressure, because changing the pressure of a gas has a huge effect on the characteristics of the gas. So think of pressure as force divided by area, right? How much force you can put on a certain area. So there are many ways to measure pressure. Here in America, one of the common ways is pounds per square inch. So pound is a force unit, and square inch is an area unit, right? Pounds per square inch. Right, so what that means, like if I drew, let's say, that's a square inch approximately, right? Like if each side of this is about an inch, then like how many pounds of force I could put on that square inch. And that would describe a pressure, force over area. So in chemistry, 1 atmosphere is a common way to measure pressure. 1 atmosphere, right? So that's like the kind of average pressure exerted by the atmosphere here on Earth. And 1 atmosphere can be translated into a whole bunch of other pressure units, including, we could say 1 atmosphere is 760 millimeters of mercury. And so what that means is if you have a barometer that uses mercury to demonstrate atmospheric pressure, then the column of mercury would be 760 millimeters. So that's 0.76 meters, right? So like 3/4 of a meter stick of mercury, which is super dense liquid metal, would be supported by the atmospheric pressure, right? If you used water and a barometer instead of mercury, it's like 30 feet. It's a very tall column of water, like a 3-story house kind of tall. So generally they use mercury just because it's easier to make a barometer that fits in a room out of mercury because it's very dense. Sometimes millimeters of mercury is called torr. So if you see pressure in torr, it just means millimeters of mercury, they're equivalent. We also could express 1 atmosphere of pressure in kilopascals, which is another force unit, 101.3 kilopascals. So it's just like kilometers or kilograms. So that would be kPa with a capital P. And a kilopascal is, well, a pascal is a Newton over a meter squared. So a meter squared is, bigger than this board, right? Square meter, like meter sticks, making a square. And then putting 1 Newton of force on that. And a Newton of force is not that much force, so that's kind of an odd force unit. Gosh, I know we have some others. When we talk about atmospheric pressure as Americans, a lot of times we use 30 inches of mercury as a kind of similar to normal atmospheric pressure. So yeah, there are tons of force units, and we'll probably use quite a few of them as we convert from one thing to another during this module. All right. But you can keep 4 sig figs on all of those. All right. So a lot of history involved, and my history is not my strong suit, folks, so stay with me. Gas laws were discovered hundreds of years ago, in fact, through experimental process by people who were just so incredibly clever, using kind of the really basic tools how gases behave. In 1662, Boyle's law was developed, which says if temperature is constant, that pressure and volume of a gas are inversely proportional, right? So it's important when you're expressing Boyle's law that you include that caveat that temperature has to remain constant, right? So pressure goes up, volume goes down when temperature stays constant. So Boyle's law is fairly intuitive to us, right? We know that when a gas, when you squish on a water bottle or a balloon, adding pressure decreases volume, right? That is intuitive. In 1780, Charles' law was developed, and it also has a caveat, which you have to express when you're talking about these laws. Pressure must remain constant when we're talking about Charles' law. Pressure must remain constant, which is kind of convenient because atmospheric pressure doesn't change during the course of an experiment a whole lot. So sometimes we can assume that pressure is constant just in the normal lab situation. So while pressure is constant, temperature and volume are linearly proportional, meaning if I heat up a gas, keeping pressure constant, the temperature goes up, and so also the volume is going to go up. Right? This is also gases expand when they're hot. This is familiar and intuitive to us. We are going to look at both of those gas laws in the lab during class, so that you'll think, oh, Boyle's law, that's the one where we squish things with books and put pressure. Oh, Charles' law, that's the one where we kept sticking our hand in an ice bucket and we found out what absolute zero is. So yeah, those two we're gonna try to develop some models in class. But here is a key point about gas laws. It is a rule that must not be broken. Temperature must be expressed in Kelvin when you're using gas laws, okay? You can't use Celsius, you can't use Fahrenheit. You've got to use Kelvin for gas law math. And here's why. Because when we look at Charles' law, right, temperature and volume are linearly proportional when pressure is constant, right? So linearly, oh, that didn't work. Linearly proportional means that when volume goes up, temperature goes up. Well, here's the thing. You cannot have a zero in the denominator of a fraction. We all know that's an undefined number, right? And so Celsius and Fahrenheit scales both allow there to be zero, right? Water freezes at 0 Celsius. We all have even experience with 0 Fahrenheit. But we cannot allow a situation where we have a zero in a denominator. So you must express temperature in Kelvin. I don't know if we've used Kelvin in the past. I think we at least had an intro to that in physical science. But if you have not, then when you're expressing temperature in Kelvin, you need to, when you have Celsius, you can easily convert to Kelvin with this equation. Okay, so Kelvin is Celsius plus 273.15. We use the degree symbol for Fahrenheit and Celsius. You don't for Kelvin. You just say Kelvin, not degrees Kelvin. You don't put the little degree mark. It's just a capital K for Kelvin. So you need to memorize this conversion factor. When you're adding and subtracting, this goes out to the hundredths place. So if your data point also goes to the hundredths place, then you can keep that. Okay, so temperature must be in Kelvin. You need to convert. It's obviously with Fahrenheit, you'd have to convert to Celsius and then to Kelvin. We use Celsius in the lab, of course, as a standard. So it's easy to convert by just adding the 273.15. Let's see. Then we end up with the combined gas law. Well, okay, so in 1802, a guy named Gay-Lussac, who was a French guy, he said if mass and volume are constant, then pressure goes up when temperature goes up. That gas law doesn't exactly have a name. Sometimes people call it Gay-Lussac's law, but we already had a Gay-Lussac's law. Some people call it by other people's names, but all those other people have laws too. So gas law naming gets really confusing. So I kind of call Gay-Lussac's law, which would be, well, not always called Gay-Lussac's law, but the relationship between temperature and pressure, if mass and volume are constant, is, I just call it that unnamed gas law. But anyway, then we get to the combined gas law. Charles Boyle's, this thing, all come together, as it turns out, and can be expressed as one convenient equation. The pressure and the pressure and volume divided by the temperature at the beginning of a situation has to be equal to the pressure times volume divided by the temperature at the end of a situation. Only if you're having an ideal gas. So that means this equation is super useful. Memorize it. And we have to define what is an ideal gas. So there are three properties of an ideal gas. One, the molecules and atoms need to be small compared to the volume. That's easy at normal room conditions of temperature, pressure, volume, right? If we kind of took all the gas that fills a room and we made it into a liquid, it would be like a teeny tiny volume, right? There's plenty of room for gas molecules to move freely in the kind of conditions that you generally experience. And so that is something that we generally have as a consequence of our normal environment. So molecules and atoms the gas molecules and atoms have to be very small in size compared to the available volume. The second is gas molecules or atoms need to be too far apart to have attractive and repulsive forces between them all the time. So again, if they have plenty of volume, gases will spread out and fill their container. They're generally going to be far enough apart at normal conditions to not have huge interactive forces. And number three, elastic conditions between the particles and the container. So no energy can be lost when gas molecules collide with each other or with the walls of their container, ceiling, floor, walls, us, everything that might be in a room, for example. That's where we get a little bit into some trouble because obviously the gas molecules colliding with walls or us will have energy shifts, right? We're hotter than room temperature, so gas molecules heat up when they hit us. When I do this, I'm heating up gas molecules by increasing their kinetic energy. So, but a lot of times we can't assume ideal gas conditions. If we have extreme pressure, then we can start to approach a situation where the gas is compressed too much to have those first two conditions met, where their volume of the container is not enough to allow the gas molecules to have a small volume compared to it, and they would start to have continual interactive forces between them. So under a lot of pressure, we start to see issues. Anyway, so that's the combined gas law with its three requirements. Standard temperature and pressure and standard conditions are two things that you need to know in your memory, so that if I just say in a problem, oh, we're working at standard conditions, you know stuff. And if I say we're working at standard temperature pressure, you know stuff. So standard temperature and pressure is just abbreviated STP. And it is basically going to be greater than or equal to, well, no, it's going to be just exactly 273 Kelvin and 1 atmosphere. So if I say, hey, we're working at standard temperature and pressure today, you want to get your coat, because remember 273 Kelvin is 0 Celsius, and that's not fun. And 1 atmosphere, which is normal atmospheric conditions. Because that's not fun, we tend not to work at standard temperature and pressure in any lab that anybody would want to be employed at. So standard conditions was developed to make humans happy. This is an N, seriously. Standard conditions is 298 Kelvin and 1 atmosphere. So 298 Kelvin is a happier room temperature for us, and 1 atmosphere is a happy atmospheric condition for us as well. So standard conditions a lot of times in chemistry. So make sure you know and have memorized these numbers. They'll be on the final as well, so you'll need to know how to use that. When you are given the fact that you're using standard temperature and pressure or standard conditions in a problem, that immediately tells you the temperature and the pressure, which are really useful details for lots of problems. So good to know. So back to 1801, Dalton's law. When two or more ideal gases are mixed, their total pressure is the sum of their individual pressures. This makes everything so easy, right? If you know you have 1 atmosphere of this gas and 2 atmospheres of that gas, you have a total of 3 atmospheres of pressure. Just can mix gases together and add them up. Gases don't really care if they're made of hydrogen or nitrogen or oxygen or whatever. Gases are basically just gases, and they just add up their pressures easily. So that's great news. So this kind of can be summed up as the pressure of an ideal gas does not depend on the type of gas, just the quantity, which we need to measure moles. 1811, Avogadro's law. At the same temperature and pressure, equal volumes of gases have equal numbers of molecules. Explosion, right? Again, gases don't care what they're made of. If you have a certain volume of gas, and that happens to be, I had that written down. Well, anyway, at standard temperature and pressure, 1 mole of gas, of ideal gas, is going to be 22.4 liters of gas. So that is what Avogadro et al. Figured out in about 1811. And this led to kind of a restatement, I guess, of our combined gas law. Right. We had it sort of stated differently before. So let's see. Or the ideal gas law. So if we combine what Avogadro said about equal volumes of gas at the same conditions have the same number of moles, and we take this plus that, we get the ideal gas law, which says pressure times volume is equal to N, which is number of moles, times R, which is a constant. That is, I think, given to you at the top of your test and also given to you at the top of your final. Let me make sure that's given to you at the top of your test. I don't have that memorized. I can't imagine that you would need to ever have that memorized. Hit pause. Okay, so R, this constant, is 0.0821, and then a complex unit, liter atmosphere in the numerator and mole Kelvin in the denominator. So memorize R for the ideal gas law. And I think that is everything I really want to lecture about, but we will have review questions and practice problems coming right up, as well as a good solid lab experience for all these cool gas law situations.